right, let's go ahead and head on over to the big story of the day and really a closer look at the UAW demands that are coming out right now. 46% wage increase over 4 years, 20% in that first year and then 5% in the years following. And also talking about pushing for a 32-hour work week, which is causing a lot of conversation. So joining me now to go over all of this is Merrick Masters. He's a professor of business at Wayne State University. Professor Masters, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Let's go ahead and take a step back and take a look at really how the beginning of all these negotiations. This is a much different tone that we've seen coming out of the UAW because of the new leadership with Shawn Fain. What is your take on it?
Well, I think it is new leadership and it's a new era in negotiations, and the UAW is willing to break with the past and demand more. As Shawn Fain has said, these are audacious demands, and that record profits demand record contracts. The question is, what kind of a difference will there be between what they asked for and what they ultimately have to settle for?
Yeah, give us a little bit of Art of the Negotiations 101, though, about you always have to start a little high. You never start with what you're going to end up with.
Yes, you only get what you ask for, and you have to be bold. And I always tell my students that you should only ask for things that you can justify. And from that perspective, I think the UAW is going to justify their demands on the grounds that they made a lot of concessions that they didn't believe should exist in perpetuity, but they should exist only so long as the companies weren't profitable. But since they've now become very profitable, at least in North America, they want their fair share of those profits.
Also setting them up for the future when we're talking about an EV future and what that will mean for manufacturing and making sure that the UAW can retain jobs for its membership. And we're looking at 150,000 people that this is going to impact. We've talked about the wages, which would actually get them close to what we've seen potentially the UPS Teamsters deal, looking at they're about $49 an hour. This would look at about $47 an hour, a little bit more. Talk to me, a little bit about that kind of comparison and maybe that wave of the unions getting to that point.
No, I think that's an important point to remember, and also put it in the context that the UAW has made a lot of other demands, and their overall wages with compensation are at least at Ford $64 an hour. And what I've been informed of is that their overall package would increase that hourly wage by anywhere from $32 to $40 an hour. Now, it's obvious that the UAW isn't going to get all that. So the question is, what can it settle for? And I think what it's really aiming at in this negotiating approach that it's taking is getting higher wages, as they did in the UPS Teamsters contract. And that's really important because EVs aren't as profitable, so you won't have as much profit sharing necessarily, and EVs require less labor, and there may not be as many workers. So what the UAW wants to do is to get as much as they possibly can in the base wage of the workers, and that ripples up through benefits, et cetera. And in addition, that becomes a very important point that they can use as leverage in trying to convince others in the non-union companies like Tesla that they should join them.
And that's what I think is very interesting, is when you step back and you take a look at how other companies are going to be looking at how this plays out. And especially, I think what people are talking about this week is the ask. It's not an official one yet, but for a potential 32-hour work week instead of a 40-hour work week. That took me by surprise in terms of entering that into the conversation. What do you think other big companies are listening to or focus in on when they hear that that might be an ask?
Well, I think that they will watch it with great interest. European countries in general have lower hour work weeks than we do. It's not uncommon to have 35, 36-hour work weeks in certain part of Europe. And I think what they're reflecting is that they think that we can move to a new era that reflects the fact that people want a better balance between leisure and work, and that these jobs are very, very difficult and physically demanding jobs, and you may actually get more out of workers if you work them less. But I think for a lot of people, this is going to be a shocker particularly when you add in the other things they're asking for. It's going to be a hard pill to swallow. And people are going to be eyeing the companies with great concern about whether they're going to give too much. And their investors are going to be very concerned about that.
All right, so as we take a look now over these next couple of weeks, what should we be watching for?
Well, I think you want to watch for signal, not noise. There's going to be a lot of hyperbole as the negotiations approach. And I think that they really need to sort through things. And not all these proposals that the UAW have made are weighted equally. Some are more significant than others. I think it'll boil down to wages and job security. What they need to do is to protect as many of the union jobs as possible, garner as high a wage increase as they possibly can, and use that as a jumping stone to hopefully organize other parts of the industry. If the UAW cannot organize the non-union companies, then its future is very, very precarious.
All right, it's going to be interesting to watch. Professor Merrick Masters, professor of business at Wayne State University. Thanks so much for joining me here on the Daily Plus Live. We appreciate it.